So we have another speaker here that I want to hear.
Thank you very much. It's nice to have everyone here. Small groups are very important. I'm co-author of this book, which is Confronting Nuclear War, the Role of Education, Religion, and Community. You will see back there, and I believe on your handout, is the website itself. The book is free. So if you dial www.confrontingnuclearwar.com, you will get the book. I was asked to speak for about 10 minutes, so I'm going to ask Ken, starting now, for my wife, tell me when 10 minutes is up, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of other discussion. 55 years ago was the night, and on a night like tonight, that I joined the nuclear disarmament movement. I was 28 years old at the time, and meeting at Dr. John Shooter's house, I learned from Dr. Kurt Hohenemser, who was one of the German scientists who came over to the U.S. after World War II, that Missouri was the prime target area for nuclear missile strike from the Soviet Union. And the reason was that Whiteman Air Force Base had deployed 150 1-megaton nuclear bombs in the 13 counties of mid-Missouri, starting at Cooper County on the east, going as far west as the Kansas border, south to Versailles, north to Higginsville. We had 450 large Soviet bombs aimed at us, and were that way until the START Treaty removed them. We are still not a prime target, well we are, because Novonostor, Whiteman Air Force Base, has B-2 bombers with H-bombs. We have the Honeywell plant in Kansas City, which makes all the parts except the nuclear parts for the bombs, and we have Boeing in St. Louis. So if the big show starts, we're screwed. As Ellen has pointed out, nuclear weapons and the threat of nuclear war are the foremost and the worst problem facing the people of planet Earth in terms of everything from health. It's the biggest environmental problem we have, the biggest agricultural problem. We're talking on this side. Now, contrary to public opinion, nuclear weapons are, under certain forms of international humanitarian law, illegal. They are obviously immoral. They are immediately dangerous. You know how long from the time, in the case of Trump, if he receives a message that Russian missiles are on the way, he ultimately, by the time the word gets to him, has 8 minutes to make the decision to launch. Here's a man whose motto is ready, fire, aim. We're in trouble. And we have a lunatic in North Korea. That's what those of us who've been in the field have been worried about all these years. So the timeline to catastrophe is minutes. Interestingly enough, Barack Obama, as you know, won the Nobel Peace Prize in part for the speech he gave in the Czech Republic right after he was elected president. Let me give you this quote, which is in the book. He said, quote, "Some argue that the spread of these weapons cannot be checked, and we are destined to live in a world where more nations and more people possess the ultimate tools of destruction. This fatalism is a deadly adversary, for if we believe that the spread of nuclear weapons is inevitable, then we are admitting to ourselves that the use of nuclear weapons is inevitable." Won the Nobel Peace Prize. Then what happened? You know that Barack Obama approved the plans that are now going to be implemented by Trump for the expenditure of $1.3 trillion, trillion dollars over 30 years for new nuclear weapon systems and delivery systems. That's what goes. We've not had a president in my lifetime who could face up to this. And there are two big problems that we don't even know about. Most people don't. If we continue our weapons in space development, particle beams, lasers, tungsten rods from God, as they call them, we will never get nuclear disarmament. China and Russia simply will not go along with it because nukes are their ace in the hole. The other thing is, I worked in D.C. for 15 years, and my wife and I lived there, against some of these people. PRW, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, GE, those people had $1,000 bills, figuratively speaking, in their pockets. I had quarters and dimes when I went up against them and tried to lobby both liberal and conservative members of Congress. But with that kind of money in the peace field, if we don't understand that you have to follow the money, we can't ever make any headway. In fact, General Smedley Butler, who's a major general in the Marine Corps, said it best. If we ever start to even talk about war, get the weapons makers to agree and to sign an agreement, they will take the same pay that the lads in the trenches make. There will be no more war. We won't have to have conferences or anything of the sort. One of the things that we cover in the book, if we're going to do good work in this field, there are at least a dozen social and psychological obstacles that we cover in this book. The main one is ignorance. And by that, I don't mean people who are ignorant, but people who don't have a clue what we're talking about here tonight. Very small percentage. Students that I've taught 5 different peace studies courses as an adjunct professor of peace studies. Students who come in now have hardly even heard of nukes. And people who have, there are many people who are against nuclear war, but you ask them, where is it on your list of things to do, and it's not on the list, or it's down to number 20. People who've been the worst about this, in my view, have been academics. We have people who are, how many times are we going to research Beowulf? Well, Beowulf is important. In the early days, in the 60s, when I would go to give a talk at a Rotary Club or Kiwanis Club, the moment I mentioned nuclear weapons, collective glaze went over the eyes. Total denial. I learned later on a little technique called psychological inoculation to avoid that. I would tell people why they're not going to hear what I say because of psychological denial. And you don't say this in a big shot way. Just explain it. See, I've had too much experience. Formerly, before I did this, the program chairman would say, Bill, here's the Kiwanis Award. Thanks so much for coming. Good luck with your project.
Right.
and that's,
thank you so much for all the work you do.
that's right. What we need, and I'll just close with this, we have to have a movement like we had in the 80s with nuclear freeze. One of our problems, though, is arms control, when you tinker at the edges, can be the disease for which it should be the cure. We've got to get rid of the damn things. We have to go with this damn treaty. It's going to be hard. It's going to take some time. But to get political change, you have to have attitudinal change. To get attitudinal change, you have to have education and communication. To have that, you have to have research so you know what in the world you're talking about. And ultimately, you have to have time, money, and energy. The politicians are not going to lead the way. We have to do it.